Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing a range of ideas and concepts in Make. And this list of things that I'm going to present here, I might update it later on and I might put something new on the GitHub, but I wanted to present and take a video of what we have so far because these are the things that I think right now you should know, or you would be happy to know that it exists even if you don't use it. So starting off, we have PHONY, and we discussed this before, but I want to go over it again because it is a very important topic. If you have a target that you want to run, regardless of whether the file exists or not, you have to mark that as PHONY. So typically you would have all, clean, or test that are targets that you want to use to do something. So clean would be a target that deletes a bunch of files, so you can do make clean, and it'll remove a bunch of files. And make all is going to run everything. It's going to build everything. And make test is going to run your tests. But if you accidentally have a file called clean or a directory named test where you keep your test files, or somehow you have a file named all, those targets will not run if they are not marked PHONY. So mark those files as PHONY like this by adding them as a prerequisite to the .phony target, and then your target will always run, even if that file exists. This also has a small efficiency improvement because it doesn't have to check if that file exists or not. So yeah, I mean, there is a small argument for that, but realistically, it's the behavior that's more important. Next up, we have .silent. This I think is very useful. If you want to run a Makefile that prints out a lot of things and you want to make it shut up and you don't want it to print out all of the recipes as it's printing, you can pass in the -s flag for silent, and that's going to mute all of the recipes. It's as if you added an at the beginning of them. But if you want that to be the default behavior, whoa, where did I go? Control Z, Control Z. Okay. If you want that to be the default behavior, you can just put the target .silent, and all of your recipes are going to be silent. They're all going to have an at the beginning of each recipe line. If you only want one target to be silent, then you can just put that target as the prerequisite of .silent, or you can do this on multiple different lines for different targets. So let's actually give that a shot, I guess, as a demonstration. And we can see that we don't see this echo command over here. Whereas if we didn't have that, we would see the echo command. Next up, we have the .default goal variable. So this was a target. This down here is a variable. And what this does is it overrides the default goal. Normally, the target that's run if you run the Makefile without providing any arguments, in this case, it's going to be this default target because we set it to default goal. Normally, it would have been the first target that you listed that didn't start with a dot. So in this case, it would be PHONY target, but you can override that behavior with .default goal. Next up, we have the recipe prefix, and I don't think anyone seriously uses this, but some people kind of really hate on Make because they use tabs, rightfully so, because it does make life difficult sometimes. But if you want to override that behavior and you want to use something else instead, you know, like this symbol or a colon or something else, you can set .recipe prefix to that value, and you can change your recipes to use that one instead. So I'll call weird recipe, and I'll just say it outright, like this looks weird. And you can just set that to the empty variable to reset it to the original tab. And finally, we have rebuilding Makefiles. So if you try to run Make, it always tries to rebuild itself first. It asks itself, do I have the latest Makefile? And for that, it looks to see if there's a rule that is able to rebuild this current Makefile. And in this case, we have a pattern rule that looks for files ending in .mk, which matches this. And then it says, let me see if this is out of date. So in this case, we don't have any prerequisites, so this file is not out of date. But if it was, it would invoke this recipe, which it assumes would update this makefile, and maybe that'll even update some recipes or dependencies or something else. And then it reinvokes itself, and finally at that point, after the reinvocation, then it actually creates your targets. So we've been running this without issue up until now, but let's give an example. Let's add some target over here, and let's echo, rebuilding makefile, and let's create some targets. Maybe just create that file, and also let's echo created some target, And so now what we expect is that when we run, well, let's run it and let's see what happens. Okay, so first thing, it determined that it had to update itself. It determined that it was out of date. So to update itself, first it had to create some target, which it did. And we see that because we can see this created some target from here. And then it recreated itself, it rebuilt itself by running this rule, rebuilding makefile. And finally, after that, it reran this makefile. But at that point, we added this recipe over here, added this info surprise to the end of this file. It might have been good if I scroll down to show you that there was nothing there before, but trust me, there was nothing. And finally, after everything was ready, then it ran the weird recipe target. And that's what we see down here. So this behavior might be useful to you. It might catch you if you ever make a catch-all rule with just a %sign, because Make will run that to rebuild itself. Be aware of it and be careful. That's all for this video. Thanks for sticking around. See you next time.